Welcome back to the Gyrl Podcast. I am Kyra Mitchell-Lewis, and today we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and it is raising young women to lead. And to join me in that discussion today is Dr. Tim Jordan, who is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician and a leading expert on parenting girls. He is also a speaker, author, and podcaster as well. So Dr. Tim, welcome to the Gyrl Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, why don't you get started by just giving the audience some background on yourself?
Well, my wife and I have been married for almost 40 years. We have 3 adult kids. A daughter, 37, who's married and has our grandson who's upstairs right now trying to go down for a nap. We're watching him today. And we have a son who's 35. My daughter lives in St. Louis. Our first son lives in Chicago. He's 35. Then the other son lives in New York. He's 31. He's married. And I'm a pediatrician by my background, my MD background. But I did a 2-year fellowship in something called Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, which is a mouthful. And I did medicine for about 2 or 3 years, and I just decided it wasn't what I wanted. So I switched over. And so I've functioned for about 30 years now as a counselor. And my practice for about the past, about maybe 15-ish years has been just girls. And most of the girls I see now in my counseling practice are, I'd say the majority are middle school, high school. And then in the last 5 years, more and more college women. Probably a fourth of my practice now is women in college who aren't coping well. And I've been running weekend retreats and summer camps for girls for 30 years. And it's interesting because they're personal growth in nature. So besides having fun and, going out in nature and doing regular camp stuff, we also sit in a circle for about 3 hours every day. And we talk about girl stuff. So if it's a grade school group, grade school girl things. If it's a middle school group things. And if it's a high school group, obviously deeper kinds of things. So it gives them a chance to talk about all the stuff that they're going through, all the challenges they're facing. And so what I bring to my writings and my podcast and what I'm bringing to you today is not just my professional stuff. It's also, I've sat in circles with girls for 30 years and I've listened, and they've educated me I can't tell you how much they've educated me about what's going on for them and what they need and all that kind of thing. So I guess that's my basic background.
No, I thank you for that. And I love that you said, that they have, helped you and they've educated you, because you listening is what is so amazing. And obviously, we're going to talk about your book, She Leads, which is this book right here, everybody. And let me just tell you, blown away. This is an amazing tool for parents, mentors, counselors, anyone who is coming into contact with a young woman. We're gonna dive into this, but I have so many notes, and I'm gonna put my glasses on actually today so that I can make sure that I can see, I can make sure I can see all of my notes and I don't miss anything. But let's just dive into your book, and you talk about needing to redefine leadership and power with young women. What do you mean by this?
Well, it's interesting. If I sit with a group of girls, and I've done this, dozens and dozens of times, and I ask them, who are the leaders in your school? I get pretty typical responses that, the student council president or the captain of the team or the queen bee or the popular girls. Those are the ones who, carry the most power. If you ask girls, and this is probably true for boys too, when I ask girls who are the heroes in our world, they talk about first responders and soldiers and professional athletes, but girls don't, the vast majority of girls don't fit those roles. Right. So a lot of girls then don't see themselves as being brave or courageous or being a leader. So I think we need to start identifying and acknowledging a lot of more different kinds of things that girls do that show leadership. Things like girls who don't care what other people think, girls who can advocate for themselves, girls who speak up, girls who have their friends' backs and stand up for their friends, girls who don't let words and teasing and all that kind of stuff bother them, girls who set good, clear boundaries, girls who have a whole community at heart, and they want to make sure everybody's successful, not just them. girls who bring the community together, girls who include people. Those are all ways that girls are stepping up and leading, but they don't get acknowledged for that as much. And so again, a lot of girls don't see themselves as being leaders.
I love, you know what? That is actually one of my favorite parts of the book, is where you start to speak about different kinds of leaders and the fact that you call out those things. And because, being an adult and working in corporate America and wanting to, women wanting to move up the corporate, the corporate ladder, a lot of times, we experience those same things where it's like, oh, well, you're not this type of leader. And we want the leader to fit in this box and be this exact type of person. And so I just was so blown away by the fact that you were already acknowledging, because me as a leader and having led young women in my career, that was the one thing that's so important to me, is that you identify in those young women the things that make them who they are. You find those motivators of who they are as people, and you build on that. And it's not just you trying to say, no, I need you to be this type of person. So I love that.
So instead of trying to get every girl to change and be like this narrow vision of what a leader is, which is typically been more of a masculine model, instead of trying to squish girls into that model, I think what we need to do is change the system. So the system, identifies and acknowledges women for all kinds of ways that they come across as being brave and leaders and all that kind of thing.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. And also just the fact that you talk about boundaries with young women at an early age, because there are people my age that still don't know how to effectively, I will go ahead and just tell on myself. Up until last year, I was a person who didn't set firm boundaries. I just let people, I was doing it under the guise of, oh, I just want to be helpful. I want to help people. And you talk about that in your book as well, where we sort of allow for ourselves to be like, oh, I want to be helpful. I want to be there for people, but we have no boundaries and people take advantage of that.
Well, even though it's year 2020, there's still that good girl, quote unquote, conditioning out there, which tells girls don't make waves and don't make people angry, and be nice to everybody and smile and be polite and wait your turn. And even, I think sometimes we think, oh no, we're past that, but we're not. I've had girls in my retreats and my summer camps make lists of what are the qualities of a good girl, the kind of girl all your parents and teachers want you to be. And they list all of those things. So they're still absorbing that around them from teachers and parents and the culture. So there's still that they have to kind of fight through. If I do a role play with kids at a weekend retreat and have a girl just sort of set a boundary because somebody's doing something that they don't like, most of the girls think that's being mean. They don't know the difference between aggressive and assertive. They just don't know. And so they think anything that might make someone upset or might make someone mad, or if they say something that causes them to not be liked, they think that that's being mean and aggressive, and it's not. So we have to do lots of role plays over and over to show them that there's a difference between taking care of yourself and being assertive and setting boundaries and being somebody who's disrespectful or aggressive or whatever. They need that kind of education, and they need practice. They just need practice.
Yeah. And I think that definitely goes along with what you're talking about as far as girls being misunderstood and mislabeled.
Yeah. So many stories of girls I see all the time where when they're young, they get labeled as being bossy, or I had a girl, I'm not sure if this is in the book or not, because I wrote the book a year or so ago. There's a girl I saw who was she was in grade school, but her mom said she remembered back when she was 4 years old in preschool, that the preschool teacher at the parent-teacher conference told the mom that her girl was the queen bee of the class. She's already being labeled as a quote-unquote queen bee.
Yeah.
And there's a girl who I saw several years ago who I saw her when she was in high school, and she was having a hard time setting boundaries, what you were mentioning before, hard time speaking up for herself. And that's why it was costing her. She was old enough now to realize it was costing her. So I tried to figure out, where did this start? And it started when she was in third grade. This is a true story. She went to the parent-teacher conference with her mom just because they couldn't find a sitter or something. So she was sitting in the back of the classroom. Her mom and the teacher were talking. And the teacher said to the mom, your daughter is way too bossy. And if she doesn't change her way, she's never going to make any friends.
Yes, I remember reading that.
The girl overheard that, and she said it just struck me. She said, I shut down. I so did not want to make friends. And so for the rest of her career, up until I saw her, she wasn't raising her hand. She wasn't speaking up. She sort of was a shell of herself because she was so afraid of losing friends. And that happens a lot for girls. There's one of my camp counselors, and she's now one of our instructors as well. I met when she was in 7th grade because she got kicked out of her school for lying for the second time. The first time she lied. The second time she didn't, but they didn't like her because she was just one of those kids who just was very independent minded and all. And I remember she told me that when she was in like 5th grade and on, if some girls came to school, like her posse, and they had on some kind of clothing like Aeropostal or Lululemon or something that was popular at the time, she would make fun of them and wear something totally different because she said, I wanted to set the trends. So when we see girls like that, they get labeled oftentimes as being the B word or bossy, not bossy word, but the other B word. And they get labeled. And so, it's like the hammer, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. They get hammered down for being independent and strong minded. And when they're younger, they have a lot of rough edges with it. They're not smooth out yet. So sometimes they overdo it, or they might be too aggressive sometimes or too out there. But instead of hammering them down, we just need to give them some tools. And we also need to give them places to channel that energy, that leadership, that power. Because if you don't, it'll go in some mischief.
I definitely agree with that. And then on the other side of that, you have girls who may be giving their power away. And when I saw that chapter, it actually just really rang true and was like, oh, yep. Because my manager always says to our team, don't give your power away. Don't let people don't you hand it over to them. And I think, reading through some of the ways, if you could talk through some of those ways that girl, because some people may not know what that looks like. If you could just touch on some of those, that would be great.
Yeah. One frame of reference I do with kids, but I also think it's good for us adults as well, is there's an Aesop's Fable about a fox that walked down the road hungry one day, and he saw some birds on a tree limb, and he got an idea. And he said, hey, birds, I've got a deal for you. I'm willing to go dig up a big old fat night crawler and give it to you. And all I want in return is just one of your feathers. So the birds huddled up and they're like, I don't know. The fox is always trying to trick us. I don't trust him. But one little bird thought, I'll try it. So she flew down. The fox went off, brought back a worm. She plucked out one of her feathers, gave it to the fox. She took the worm, flew off. She thought, this is awesome. The next day, the fox brought another worm. The little bird plucked out another feather, gave it to the fox. This went on every day for about a month until she had plucked out so many of her feathers, she could no longer fly. And the fox jumped on her and ate her up. The end. That's an Aesop's Fable. But so what I tell girls is don't give up your feathers. So if you allow words to hurt you, you're giving up a feather. Say, where do you want to go to dinner tonight? You say, oh, I don't know. I don't care. You're giving up a feather. When you don't set boundaries, you're giving up a feather. When you compare yourself to other people, you're giving up a feather. When you worry more about other people's feelings than your own, you're giving up a feather. So here's a big one for girls. When you make decisions to either please people or not disappoint people or to get people to like you, instead of, because of your truth, you're giving up a feather. There are so many ways girls give up their feathers. And one thing, one time isn't that big of a deal. But if I talk to an audience of 100 women, which I've done, gazillion times, and I ask them, how many of you have an automatic response when someone says, where do you want to go to dinner? Or, what movie do you want to see? How many of you have an automatic response of, I don't care? Almost the whole room raises their hand. So this is not like an isolated thing, like just an occasional woman. This is a lot of women have been brought up that way. That's part of the good girl conditioning. So that girls have got to become aware of how they're giving their feathers away, how they're giving their power away.
Yeah, no, I that's a great,
Which one struck you? You said some of them popped out at you.
Let's see. So I definitely, I'm actually just looking in my book now. I think they don't ask for what they want,
Yeah.
because definitely in the, I'm just going to sort of talk from, current experience. But, you look at women in corporate America, right? And I actually was having this conversation with somebody earlier this week, how a lot of times there were some positions that might become unavailable. So you have women who are like, oh yeah, I might be interested in that. I'm not really sure. You have men who are like, they have no experience to do that job, but they're like, oh, I want to go ahead and try out for that. I think I could do that. But with the women, it's always a thought of not to ask for it, because women sort of live in this place where they think, I'm doing a really great job, I will be rewarded for my efforts because I'm doing well. But that's not often how it, works. It's like, if you don't open your mouth, and I can say that from just some past experiences on some previous jobs where I didn't open my mouth and say, no, I think actually you're continuing to ask me to take on more work. So I think that I should be compensated for taking on more work. And now today I can say that, but that's with growth. But it does take you back to a place to where, like you said, this is why this book and what you teach is so important for parents and adults and young women's lives, because you need to already be instilling that value into them so that they aren't afraid to speak up and ask for what they want.
And give them lots of those ways. There's a whole bunch of those things in the book about ways girls can keep their power. They can retain and keep their power. I have girls like that one about not asking for what they want. That's one that you brought up. I have girls do experiments because their fear is, if I say, well, I want to go to this place for dinner, their fear is that it'll make people mad, that people will be unhappy, that they may go away and or they may lose a friend. I mean, they go to all these dark places with it. So I say, let's just do some experiments. So the next time someone says, hey, where do you want to, whatever, instead of giving your knee-jerk automatic, I don't care, or I don't know, I tell them pause and just say, can you hold on a second? I'll be right back. And I tell them just go take a minute and just have some quiet time and say, what do I want? Right. Like, where do I want to go to dinner? What movie do I want to see? And then go back and as part of the experiment, say, I'd like to go to this place for dinner, and then see what happens. And the truth is that 99 times out of 100, nothing happens. The other person's head doesn't explode. They don't get mad. You don't lose a friend. That may happen, but almost never. And so that's new evidence that says maybe it's okay for me to put my ideas out there. And I tell girls all the time, when you keep telling people, I don't know, or I don't care, you're teaching them that what you have to say and what you need is not important. And therefore you are not important. And that's a really important awareness for girls.
Yes, no, I agree with that. And I do, and I agree with you. I love that you do just even use something as an example, as simple as, where do you want to go for dinner? Because, being obviously now we're date nighting in our house, pretty much. But my husband, we were, when we were going out, we would go to the movies. Like, we had a date night at the movies every weekend. And I was always like picking the movie. I'm like, oh no, I know we want to see this. Or even now, like with our Friday night date nights, we might order like Uber Eats or something. And I'm like, oh, so would you like to have this? Because this is what I want, and he's like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's not like you said, it's not going to be the end of the world. Nobody's going to jump up and run away. But I think when you're young, those things, obviously they seem so big. They seem so monumental that if you, girls will end up going along to get along and not being happy at all. So I definitely think it's something they have to start doing very early on.
I think I wrote about this in the book too. The female brain is wired to connect. That when a girl is born, compared to a little boy, the centers for emotional connection, the centers for emotional sensitivity, and those kinds of and verbal connections are much bigger in the female brain than the male brain. And evolutionary psychologists have tried to figure out, wonder why that is. And so, their theory is that back in the uncivilized prehistoric days, 100, 150,000 years ago, which is most of our history, by the way, that if you got into a fight with the group and you got kicked out of the group, especially if you were a woman, you didn't survive, you died. So being kicked out meant death. Being connected in a group, you were supported, your offspring were supported, and you had a much better chance of surviving. So that's been passed on through our genes. So even today, girls they're being treated terribly by their friend or terribly by the group. They put up with all kinds of crap. And it's easy for us as adults to say, well, just move on. Why are you still hanging out with them? That's what parents say a lot. But girls don't want to end the friendship. They're so worried that if I say something or if I do something, not only might I lose that friend, they may take the whole group. If they take the whole group, I've got nobody, I'm alone, and that feels like a death. So even today, being alone and all that feels like a death to girls. Yeah. So they will avoid it like the plague. They will apologize when they've done nothing wrong. They will bend over backwards to try and make things right. It's sad in a sense because a lot of times they put up a lot of stuff that they don't need to, and probably don't, and obviously don't deserve to put up with, but they're so afraid. Yeah. They're so afraid of losing friends.
Right. And what role, in some of your conversations with girls, like what role does social media even play in their thoughts and how they manage through some of these situations?
Well, I think sometimes we give too much responsibility for mean girl behavior to social media. But long before there was social media, long before there were cell phones, there was girl drama and mean girl behavior and all those and gossip and rumors and talking about people behind their backs. That's an old story. Right. Now social media has amped it up. And it means that it doesn't stop when you're in person, in the hallway of school. You take it home with you. You take it, 24/7. That is different. So I was just talking to someone recently. I said, my feeling, and this is why I tell parents a lot, I don't think any girl is ready for social media, Instagram, TikTok, those things. I don't think they're ready till they're at least in high school, and they have a really good track record for keeping their power and handling conflicts appropriately and not comparing themselves too much. And they don't get invested in drama and blah, blah, blah. If they can show you over time that they can handle themselves in that way, then maybe it's worth them trying it. But most girls in 7th and 8th grade are not ready emotionally for all the stuff that comes at them. It's so hard. I saw a girl yesterday who she dropped out of college this year because it's so expensive, and she was all online, and she's not sure what she wants to do. She's like her second year. And so she said she hasn't been on social media or and that kind of thing for about a month. And I said, well, why'd you quit? She said, because I would look at pictures of people having so much fun at their job or so much fun at college. And it made me feel like I'm this worthless, whatever, I'm behind and all this. So she said, I just can't look at those pictures. And she's 20. Wow. So you think about if you're 12 or 10, right, or whatever, or 14, that they have way less maturity, way less social emotional intelligence. So I just don't feel like they're equipped yet to handle all the stuff that comes at them from social media.
Yeah, and because I know there are a lot of people, 25 and up that aren't really prepared for social media, because it can take a toll on people. And I think it's very interesting that you the example of seeing other people's lives, like everybody, I love social media. I love Instagram, but I'm mature enough at this point in my life to be able to say, like, well, people show you the good things. People show you the oh, look how great my life is, those moments on Instagram, but nobody's talking about, like, it was really hard for me to get up out of the bed today. I was depressed this morning, or guess what? I feel fat today, and I don't want to work out. So
for my weekend retreats and my summer camps, when the girls check in, one of the first questions is, where's your phone? And I will say, hand it to your dad or your mom, whoever it was, dropping you off. And they have all these excuses. Well, it's my alarm clock, and I have to listen to music when I fall asleep, and they have all these things. And we say, I get it. Oh, yes, that's great. Give your phone to your parents. So we have no electronics at camp, and it's only for a weekend or a week. Yeah. And I can tell you, after doing this for a long time, that at the beginning, when they're in the check-in table, they're not happy about it. But at the end of the week, if I ask a circle of 25 high school, middle school girls, how many of you missed your phone? Nobody raises their hand.
Right.
They all will say it was really nice just for a week or even just for a weekend to not have to look at it and worry about it and have all that tension. And their little discovery when they get home is nothing happened. Well, little things happen, but they didn't lose their friend group and they didn't miss out on anything that was earth shattering. But just the part about not having to look at it and the pressure being off and just being fully present and all that, they need that. Not just, for a summer camp or a weekend retreat, but just, periodically, just to take a break from those kinds of things.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I like that because that is, it reminds me of, is it Social Dilemma? Yeah.
Yeah.
And just when the little girl literally cannot eat dinner and she's like, I'm going to break this box. And she just has to have her phone. And then the son he can't even go. Like he can't go like a week without his phone before he's like, well, I'm just going to take a peek. And, and I think, I mean, we try to do that on like Sundays sometimes where we just say like phones upstairs and like nothing's going to like happen, and we'll be back on it later at night so you can see. But yeah, you don't miss anything. It's actually just pretty like soothing and relaxing to be away from it.
And some of those experts in that Social Dilemma documentary said this, and my wife and I travel 10, 12 times a year giving talks to parent groups, blah, blah, blah. And I've met a bunch of people who kind of like some of those people in that documentary where they are the CEO of one of those big media companies or Verizon or whatever, or some of them, were the originators of video games and things. So these are people who are in the business, making things for the business. And they all say to us, I would never let my kids have these things till they're at least in high school.
Yes.
And they made it. They're the inventors or they're in charge of it. But they say everything that documentary said, which is just so addictive. And we make it addictive. We know what we're doing. And so, that's why the other reason why I think until young people are at least in high school with a good track record, I just don't think they're ready.
Right. No, I definitely agree with you. So what are some ways that girls can keep their power?
One of the ways we haven't talked about yet is to learn how to resolve their conflicts directly.
Yes.
Girls are so afraid of confronting people, their friends especially, because of those same reasons. I might make them mad. What if they go away? What if I lose a friend? All those things. And my wife and I have a school program called Strong Girls, Strong World. And we've been going into schools and working with classrooms of girls. Sometimes they're high school teams or whatever for probably 25 years. And so we teach the girls some steps to resolve conflicts directly and peacefully. And then we'll say to a circle of maybe 20 girls in a classroom, does anybody have a real conflict you would like to handle with somebody in your class? And the teachers like almost throw up. They're like, oh my God, they'll never do this. I can't believe you're doing this. And we have never in 25 years, ever not had a volunteer. And so we'll say, ask permission. You'll say, hey, Susie, would you mind coming in and handling this? Okay. They come in the middle and we guide them to talk to each other, listen to each other, even more importantly, and to resolve the conflict peacefully. And 95 times out of 100, they talk about things that didn't happen this morning or yesterday. Sometimes it's months or years ago. Especially if it's a private school. These kids have been in the same class together. Right. So now they're in 6th grade and something happened in 3rd grade and almost always a misunderstanding. Feelings were hurt. Nothing got handled. They just kind of stuff it and act like no big deal, but it was a big deal. And those feelings just sort of fester.
Right.
And then that comes out oftentimes as mean girl behavior and eye rolling and things. So once we guide them to solving it, sometimes there's tears, sometimes not, but they hug and now they're friends again. They've been avoiding each other for a year, 2 years or 3 years about a misunderstanding. So they need those skills. That's one way they can keep their power. Another way is we teach girls how to not let words bother them. Teasing, rumors, gossip, that kind of thing. That's a big one because if they allow words to hurt them, not only do they feel hurt or sad in that moment, or if somebody leaves them out or something, girls go inside their head and they start asking themselves questions like, why am I being left out? Why didn't my friend call me this weekend? Why? And then they always answer the questions in their head with their own little private logic, trying to figure it out. And almost always almost always what they figure out is unhealthy, negative things. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm awkward. Maybe I don't fit, blah, blah, blah. And so those thoughts become beliefs. They actually think those things are true. So that affects every relationship they have from that day forward. When they walk into any social situation with that garbage in their head, like I'm not good enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I don't fit, then they're going to act a lot different. They're going to talk different. They're going to relate different. And so they keep repeating the pattern because they're not, being out there and not being themselves. So that's a big one, is for girls to sort of take back that power, not let those words and things bother them. So they let people know, you can say what you want. I'm in charge of me. I'm in charge of my emotions. I'm in charge of how I react to people. We have a concept we call tomato words, where we teach girls that if someone calls you stupid or whatever, that you can go inside your head, not out loud, but inside your head, and say to yourself, I'm not a tomato. I'm not that thing. I'm not going to let it bother me. It's just a word. I'm not a tomato. And then they smile and they go, whatever, and they walk away. And they don't give a feather away. And we say, I'm not a tomato because it's a silly word and nobody would feel sad or hurt if someone said you're a tomato.
Right.
But that's a little tool, but it's so powerful. When girls use that and they inside themselves are saying, I'm in charge of me. I'm not going to let this word bother me. It's just a word. It's just a word. I tell girls there are no mean words. There's just words. Now you can allow them to be mean and hurt your feelings and cause you to be angry or whatever. You can do that. Or you can say, it's just a word. I'm not a tomato. I'm not that word. I'm not going to let those words bother me. I'm not giving my power away to other people and to words.
I love that. That is amazing. And I think that, again, I'm going to keep talking about it, but just in terms of your book, that it is just an amazing tool. I think for adult women. So if you have children, raising daughters, know a daughter, have a niece, or a teacher, counselor. But if you're just a woman yourself, you will appreciate reading this tool, because I think that, even as adults, like for me, going back through that book just took me back to being in the 5th grade, being in the 6th grade, going through junior high school, and just thinking, wow, like if this was poured into me at that age, how I would have and could have, would have handled things differently, and wouldn't have had to wait until I was an adult, to sort of uncover some of those hidden truths that these gems that you're putting right before us right now.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we started our camps 30 years ago. This is actually our 30th year anniversary. My wife and I had taken a weekend retreat, like a personal growth kind of retreat. This was back in 1988, I think. I'm aging myself, but and it was the first time in my life, because I went to college, medical school, residency, fellowship and all that, and got plopped out when I was, I think 32 or 33, had never done any kind of personal growth or any of those kinds of things. And so, we loved it. It was incredibly powerful. So then we took a 2-year training to be able to teach those retreats. We started putting them on in St. Louis here. But one of the things I realized was when adults came, they started talking about things that may have been maybe holding them back now as adults, or maybe was causing some issues in their marriage or their relationship. Almost always the seeds of that issue started when they were kids.
Yep. That
they never handled. And so I thought, why are we waiting until they're 30 or 40 or 50 to handle this? Maybe we can give kids a forum or a space where they can talk about these things, make better sense of it, and then not carry it with them into adulthood.
Yes, no, definitely. I agree with you. That's so great. This has been a great conversation. And I am so thankful to you for coming on and talking with me. Can you tell people, my audience, where to find you online? And most importantly, how can they get your book?
You can get the book on Amazon and Kindle and all those kinds of places, an ebook or a paper book. My website is just drtimjordan.com, like Dr. drtim, JORDAN.com. Besides the book, the She Leads book, also this week we launched a brand new online parenting course, my wife and I. It's called Parenting Girls, and it's about girls' emotional life and also about girls' friendships. And it's about 8 hours of content, broken up into little pieces, obviously, but it just came out on Monday. And I think for parents, a lot of parents have said over the years, I wish I could take you home with me. And when these things crop up, and I said, so now you can take me home with you, and you'll have
Exactly.
me. You can watch these videos at your leisure, and you can go back and forth. And 6 months from now, you can go back and say, what do you say about that? So that it's called Parenting Girl. So if you just go to our website, there's some button you press, and boop, information comes up if anybody's interested in that. We're having more time at home. And you don't have to sit down for 8 hours and watch this. You can watch, a 6-minute video or an 8-minute video, then you go back in a few days and just, kind of do it at your own pace. But there's a lot of helpful information. I want parents to understand girls' emotional lives at a much, much deeper level, and also their friendships. Otherwise, it's really hard to parent and be effective when you don't really know what's going on.
Right. No, I agree with you. So thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Tim, for coming on and spending some time with us today. I wish you and your wife and all the success in the world. And I think what you're doing for young women is amazing.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. Anytime.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, guys. I'll be right back.